Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we've got some news. Hotfix 5.0.1 has just dropped, which only has one fix, but yeah, we never really get hotfixes this quickly. It normally takes a week and we'll probably get another hotfix next week anyway, but it's pretty interesting because they're also outlining what to expect in future hotfixes, including changes for the Grudge Settler stuff. This is actually quite good because the communication is much better. A lot of people have been asking about the grudge issues and so on. Honestly, I'm feeling very confident with CA right now, so let's read over the fix and then let's read over what's next. So this is the fix. Greetings folks, before we reach the weekend we wanted to get a single line hotfix out to address a critical issue that we spotted earlier in the week for new players that are making their way through the prologue. So apparently a lot of people are actually getting into the game right now, and this is something that we know by the way. Oddly enough, the Warhammer 3 base game ended up in the top sellers and it's been causing some soft locks. This kind of means that there's, I guess, new players, like actual new players who aren't used to Total War, because while the prologue story is quite good, let's be honest, a lot of people are just going to be focusing around just getting into the campaign map, right? And there's a lot of mention here regarding softlocks, regarding the Garden of War and some stuff with Malachi. I'm expecting that we'll get a proper size hotfix next week. It does make sense, as these types of things always end up being a week later, which is pretty good. Actually, well, only becoming a week later is a recent thing. It used to be you'd have to wait a month. The biggest issues there is if a vampire takes your settlement with a Garden of War in it, which apparently can cause a crash. They say the temporary workaround right now is just, if you know the vampires are coming this way, delete the settlement, which I guess kind of makes sense. Personally, I'd never focus on building up the Gardens of War once Vlad is still up and running, because he can steamroll you depending on you as a player. Hell, even me, I've been playing for a long time, and I did have a little bit of a moment when I was streaming this during the early access period where Vlad was just really giving me a good 1-2. But I think the what's next section is actually the most important thing. Thanks for all your feedback surrounding the Age of Reckoning system since update 5.0 and the launch of Thrones of Decay. This has been really helpful to all of us across the teams this week, as we've looked at some possible adjustments that we'd like to bring into the game as soon as we're able. Some of these fixes have already been lined up for a future update, and whilst we're working away on them, here's a sneak peek at what we have in mind. What issues are we looking to address in the later updates? Grudge targets scaling out of control as players meet new factions, specifically as the player meets new factions across the world via things like quest battles and alliances. Players feeling too rushed by the 10-turn cycle. Players struggling to get out of the lower tier brackets when they would receive debuffs rather than bonuses. Some dwarf factions have easier starts than others when it comes to hitting grudge targets. The influx of free units and the summoned Grudge Settler armies have a disproportionately massive effect on the early game. In the later game, massive stockpile Grudge Settler units build up in the pools of participating factions, causing constant, instant and free replenishment for losses. Yeah, you know, it's a bit there. It's good for the player. It's not so good when you're dealing with enemy factions kind of replenishing a little bit with, like, it's kind of like Vlad, you know how he spawns armies so quickly. It's a pretty interesting thing, I'll tell you that though. What are we looking to do to address these issues? We're looking to change how we calculate your met factions when determining grudge targets, to instead look at factions you share a land border with rather than just any met faction. Okay, yeah, that's pretty good. I think that's going to help out quite a lot. This change will still allow grudge targets to scale up and down depending on your local situation, but it won't get out of control after simply meeting new factions across the map. This in general is something that has been talked about during the early access period, which I think is going to be quite good. It's one of these things where if you're not moving a lot, whereas I'm a slow grower, I've been playing Ungrim recently on a stream and it's not been that bad, but it definitely does get noticeable if you start, like, for example, revealing the map. I did see someone streaming and they complained because they used the Fog of War map, which that's usually just there for purposes. I understand that you kind of want to look at everything, but it's always best to avoid those things anyway, because sometimes, by the way, it actually does trigger the anti-player bias. I know some people don't actually know this, so this is why you get more factions kind of dogpiling on you. Let's continue. We'll be removing the growth control penalties from the second Age of Reckoning bracket, Scruff, and slightly lowering the debuffs from the first, Elgi. While we don't want players to always hit the high rewards each cycle, we don't want them to struggle to get out of the negative brackets. By making the second stage Scruff act more like a neutral stage rather than a second negative one, it will hopefully alleviate the pressure of needing to clear at least 50% each cycle to get out of the red. Okay, that's not too bad. It doesn't really affect me too much as a long-term player. I know some people who are probably not as well versed with the game will struggle. So at the end of the day, making it easier for the newbies, when we're getting a lot of new players and a lot of returning players who obviously might have had a break with Total War for about a year, given the recent circumstances, yeah, they're going to be rusty. I think that is actually going to be quite good. Alright, let's continue here. We're looking to increase the Age of Reckoning durations to 15 turns from 10. Yeah, that's going to be overall quite good. By giving players a longer duration, we hope it gives them a bit more freedom to take that 2 to 3 turn movements to a new target that might have more grudges, rather than feeling you always need to rush to the next closest enemy because you don't have enough time. Okay, yeah, fair play. That will actually be quite good. A dev did mention during the early access period that that was likely going to be a possible fix if people found it too difficult. So yeah, overall that's going to be a really good change, especially, I don't know, man, it's like the whole thing with the mountains in the World's Edge Mountains. There's sometimes that you have to take 2 to 3 turns movement to get to an enemy, and that includes using the underway, so yeah, that's not too bad. Okay, let's continue. We'll be adding a few more starting grudges to the world where appropriate. Awesome, more grudges will be great, especially, you know, for Queek, for Skarsnik, I think would be very useful, especially as VIKRAM, who you would take that area, you kind of want to build up for a while, so getting a little bit more is going to be good. We will be reducing the size of the spawn Grudge Settler army, but allowing you to increase it via tech. Okay, that's great. I mean, it's just ridiculous. There was such a good army at the very beginning, and it just kind of lets you steamroll a bit too much. So it's going to be a bit better, and that means that the AI is not going to abuse it too much. Grudge Settler units will no longer be free to recruit, but adding some recruitment cost reduction in mid-game techs. I don't know. I guess, yeah, because of the AI, it's going to have to be tested out to see how that works. I don't know, it's always good to have a little bit of an oh shit army for the newer players, but if it's not going to cost too much, this is my worry here, and I know Creative Assembly are listening because I usually get a dev message me after the hotfix video. Hopefully it's not too expensive, because at the end of the day it still needs to be viable and something that people will be using. We're reducing the maximum Grudge Settlers reserved in the pool, and reducing the cap of Grudge Settler units that can be used in each army at the start of the game, but adding more capacity to the tech tree. Okay, I'm not too sure what to think about this. It's one of these things where really early on you're not going to be getting that many grudges, and even the AI doesn't get that much, so you're not going to get that much of a pool. It's good to get the capacity. I would say maybe, in my opinion, every major hold would increase the capacity by 1, so start very low and then just go through the major holds to kind of get it there, but maybe that's a bit too difficult to code in. It'll give you a little bit more reason to go for the historical dwarf areas. I mean, you already have that with the grudge system, but you know what I mean, right? Just kind of give you a little bit of flavor, plus benefits to that flavor. And we got a little bit of flavor here. The overall goal is that players shouldn't hit the maximum reward every time, but we don't want that to become a stressful experience for players who just don't want to receive debuffs. So we'll continue to test and monitor the changes over the following patches to ensure that we hit that sweet spot. Yeah, that works great. I know some people would be complaining as to why wasn't this done before, why wasn't this tested heavily. I imagine that they've been a little bit rushed to get it out and about, especially with the stress coming in from the announcement from Sega about the layoffs. It might have just kind of screwed everyone over a little bit, because, I mean, you know, you just found out that you might be losing your job. And lastly, when do we expect these changes to arrive? Our top priority has and always will be to resolve any instability issues that we're made aware of, like those mentioned at the top of this post. Once fixes for these have been rolled out, our next goal will be focused around bringing further updates and improvements, including the Age of Reckoning tweaks detailed above, to you in a future update as soon as we're able to. We won't rush this, as we want to make sure that we get them right and everything is working as it should, so we can't give a specific time frame on this, but we'll likely return to you next week with more information on upcoming updates. Okay, so they're going to try and fix the crash issues that are happening right now, which obviously makes a lot of sense. I would rather that sorted than the dwarf stuff first anyway, because the crashes are the big stuff. Like I said, you could ignore the Age of Reckoning stuff if you so wish. I've been playing Malachi, no problems. Ungrim, no problems. It's a little bit slower with Belagar, that's for sure, because Belagar has a pretty awful system that really needs to get updated in a future patch, let's be honest there. I'm loving the communication, I'm loving the fact that they're actually being much more vocal about this. If we're going to be getting more like dev diaries in the style of what Paradox does, that will be awesome, because we need to know what's going on. Sure, fixes might take a while because obviously this game has a lot of tech debt. It's very obvious. You know, I speak about that. Legend speaks about that. Essentially, you add something to the game and 5 other things break. So if they're going to be able to talk about this and actually say, hey, this is a clear issue, we want to fix this, this is what we're going to do, that is going to be much better for the lifespan of the game. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion, and I'll leave the link to the blog post. Well, it's on the community tab, actually, not the blog, in the description below. Have a great day, guys. Lots of stuff coming out. I've got a few videos on the works, which are going to be quite interesting. I've got loads of ideas now. It's amazing. I actually feel like I'm feeling the flow again. But yeah, have a great day, guys.